Usually I find that the belief or the fear of being abandoned or left alone actually does come from a very physical point of view. It comes from identification with the physical body in an external universe, therefore generating the illusion that it's possible for you to even be alone, when from a non-physical point of view you can never be alone. You'd be surprised how not alone you are right now, or when you're sleeping, or when you're showering, or when you're masturbating, or when you're interacting with your best friend, or when you're not interacting with anyone physically. You'd be surprised how not alone you are if you could see and sense more from the non-physical point of view. So any kind of sense of exclusion, rejection, separation, not being loved, not being connected to this universe, being abandoned, that all comes from you looking through these physical little light bulbs and believing that that's actually who you are. This is who you are. As you start to loosen up your sense of identity coming from the body and the individual, you start to expand into the space that you are and start to include more of your environment at any given moment, and start to include more awareness of the non-physical aspects of your consciousness and of this realm, of this world. And you will never start to feel alone anymore because you're always connected to the universe. You can only ever feel alone if you come from a physical identification point of view. And I find that those that have a, usually, ironically or symbolically, those that have a more fragile physical system, in general, I would say, for example, the female body, but that's not always true generalization. But anyone that feels more frugal, that feels more sensitive from early age onwards, from their physical body's point of view, they tend to have more difficulty with the belief. They tend to be more susceptible to believing that they can be abandoned, that they can be harmed and threatened and left alone. It's because of the identification with the body, in this case being more sensitive than everything around it, and therefore feeling like they could be harmed, but only because they've identified themselves as the body. If that identification gets let go of, gets loosened up and transcended, through the I am practice, for example, or seeing that you're not the body but you're the awareness of it, or just changing the beliefs and realizing I cannot be the body because I'm consciousness and I include all of this experience, not just the body. Whatever permission slip you use to loosen your identification with the body, or imagine that you're completely dead and realize that you still exist. Imagine what it's like after death and you'll realize there still will be consciousness. All these practices will allow you to feel like you're not your body and allow you to feel that much more joyful and less susceptible to beliefs of loneliness, abandonment, rejection, unlovability, fragileness, sensitivity, being a problem for you, whatever it might be. So feeling unsafe and insecure is usually, I would say almost always, the result of identification with the physical body. As soon as that gets relieved, and my academy definitely does offer consistent tools from the enlightenment, especially in the enlightenment sector, path, the self-realization path of Enlightenment 1 and Enlightenment 2, it will offer lots of tools to realize yourself disengaged from the physical body or disidentified with the physical body, and gives you a great sense of stability, sturdiness, eternity, invincibility, immortality, eternity, etc. And that can help loosening up the sense of, oh, I'm this fragile little object within this alien external universe, and makes you see that I am an eternal, unshakable, unmovable consciousness within which all this appears. So what? So what? You're sensitive. So what? Doesn't mean you have to feel insecure. Doesn't mean you have to feel abandoned or like someone could abandon you or reject you. Doesn't mean you have to feel alone in this universe, because this universe is inside of your consciousness. You're alone anyway. It's all your consciousness anyway. On a non-physical level is the only place where true interaction of consciousnesses happens. On the physical level, this is just all created out of your own perceptive energy. Now the connections behind this illusion are real, but they're happening at an internal level of consciousness. It's never external. So you're never alone. The whole universe is right here, literally, inside of your consciousness, inside of your inner being. Stop looking at your life through the point of view of I'm a physical body, and you will start to feel a much greater sense of I could never be alone. I could never be rejected. I could never be abandoned. I could never be unsafe or insecure. Doesn't mean it will never arise, it will never get triggered because of some kind of specific subtle belief you hadn't uprooted yet before, But in general, you will now gain the perspective you need to transform these limiting beliefs. If you don't have the perspective to begin with of I am actually not the body, then you don't have any contrast to compare these limiting beliefs to, and therefore they will never be fully conscious. They will always continue to run your life from a subconscious or unconscious level. So you first need that expanded, higher vibratory, more truthful, aligned perspective from the higher self, the true consciousness point of view, the inner being's point of view. Now from this contrast, from this perspective, you have something to work with when the other beliefs come up. You actually can see them from an expanded place, let go of them, see that they're true only from their own point of view, and they're totally valid and relevant from their own point of view, but not for who you are. Therefore, they're not true, and now you start to really feel more sturdy, more stable, more empowered.